What's up, brother, sister? Here's a book, Yuchi Indian History Before the Removal Era. All right? Now, you've seen this picture of this brother before, but I'm going to go turn, page 51. All right? Start off right here. I'm going to read it. Narrative and cartographic records present three interrelated factors that condition apparent Yuchi settlement mobility and location. All right. First, records dating as early as 1691 indicate Yuchi English trading and military alliances and document consistent enmity on the part of the Yuchi towards the French and their native allies. Second, each location indicated for Yuchi communities in the 1697 through 1715 period appears to have been in proximity to or conjunction with other English allied native communities or trading partners. Third, the native slave trade with the English of South Carolina appears to have been a common economic strategy among these multi-ethnic community clusters and may have been the basis for the formation and reformation of such clusters. A native informant told Levasseur of the Al-Sha'ali and the neighboring groups on the Alabama River that the English were in those nations every day, and the greatest traffic between the English and the savages is the trade of slaves which the nations take from their neighbors whom they war with continuously, such that the men take the women and the children away and sell them to the English, each person being traded for a gun. Does this sound familiar? Savalu related that in the midst of the Ta-O-U Galleys, the Tiles, the Cassotus, and the Caskin Napas, there is an Englishman established to trade in slaves, as they are among several other nations. Slightly later, the Tahogalegas on the Savannah River and the Uchis on the Osi-Muki River positioned themselves among other native groups that were heavily involved in the Carolina slave trade. At Chestowe, whether at Chestowa, Tennessee, Chotu, Georgia, or Show-Easto, South Carolina, the Yuchi community settled adjacent to the Cherokees, English trading partners who also participated in the slave trade, albeit later and to a lesser degree than groups such as the Chickasaw, the Yamasees, and the Westos. And these names kind of like Gullah-Geechee, Cherokee, Omo, Osi-Muki. These names sound very familiar, man, but I digress. The period movement of the Yuchi communities and their recombination with other English allied slaving groups at the beginning of the 18th century reflects an adaptation to the rapidly changing and increasingly dangerous native landscape wrought by the slave trade, the shatter zone. All right, as slavers decimated the ranks of Spanish allied, French allied, or non-aligned native groups in the course of Queen Anne's War, they repositioned themselves in different arenas for continued advantage in the capture and sale of slaves, among peltry and other items, to English traders. Coalition with and proximity to other English-aligned native communities probably provided mutual protection against reprisals from French or Spanish allies. Although conclusive narrative evidence of the extent and duration of the Yuchi role in the Indian slave trade system is lacking, the strategic repositioning of Yuchi settlements and a consistent association with slaving societies suggests that the Yuchis were active slavers who raided the Ohio country and French Louisiana. The apparent movement of the Yuchi communities into the eastern Tennessee Valley, the Savannah River Valley, and the Osi-Muki River Valley during Queen Anne's War, 1702 to 1713, may also have been part of an English-directed effort to bolster Carolina's frontier while retaining ready access to threats of war in Louisiana, Florida, and the Illinois country. Anticipation of a major French-Spanish offensive against Carolina in 1706 prompted the English to rally their native allies, and Yuchi settlements appear to have drawn into a closer arc around Carolina's frontier about this time. Placement of the strongly pro-English Yuchi community at Chestowe which appears to have been a guest town that borrowed a pre-existing Cherokee settlement location name, may also have served to guard against French influence among the Cherokee, who remained peripheral to Queen Anne's War and whose English alignment was considered insecure. In 1713, Yuchi warriors captured a group of Frenchmen with their goods, who, it was supposed, might have a design to tamper with the Cherokees. The Yuchis of the Chestatouille may also have helped to guard the thinly settled Cherokee frontier on the lower Hiwassee River against the French Indians that frequently molest Euphae's town. Chestatouille was the westernmost settlement on the Cherokee frontier, and an outliner that would have absorbed the brunt of raids of Louisiana or Illinois. Additionally, the Yuchis, closer proximity to Carolina for the bases of Chestatouille, Savannah town, and the Osamuki promoted greater access to English trade and increased opportunities to participate in profitable English expeditions, such as the 1711 campaign against the Choctaws and the 1712 Tuscarora campaign. Unfortunately for the Yuchis, the Chestatouille and other groups, English alliance and the co-residence with other English aligned groups did not confer immunity from the Carolina slavers. The flow of slaves from the wartime expedition only wetted the adverse of some unscrupulous traders who, as Agent Thomas Narine observed in 1709, were inciting one tribe of our friends to destroy others, merely to purchase the prisoners taken for slaves, kidnapping and selling free people of such weak towns as were unable to resent the injury. Narine also noted that those English traders who live among them had got a trick of setting them to surprise one another's town. By that means to have the quicker sale of their goods for the prisoners taken. Such raids were probably facilitated by uncomfortable relations within coalitions of desperate native groups cobbled together by Carolina agents. Yuchi-Cherokee relations appear to have been especially uneasy. In 1712, James Douglas, a trader at the Cherokee town in Echo, heard some grumbling against the Yuchis, and Eliezer Wigan testified that the Cherokees were dissatisfied for the loss of some of their people to the Yuchis, apparently a reference to kidnapping and enslavement of Cherokees. Benjamin Clee testified that the Yuchis, before disturbance, killed one Cherokee. Alexander Long, who resented the loss of his scalp to Yuchi warriors in 1711, seized upon Cherokee dissatisfaction to engineer his revenge upon Chestatouille. Long applied and proven formula for cutting off and enslaving small towns, probably patterning his scheme after a 1707 incident in which one James Child raised the people of some of the Cherokee towns and led them to cut off 2 or 3 small towns of our friends. Pretending 'twas the governor's order, they destroyed the towns, the Kusas and the Talapusas, and sold the captives. When Long wrote to Governor Craven in 1713 to seek official sanction for the planned raid, he may have cited reports that the Yuchi or Round Town people were going from their settlement, and it was thought were going to the French, as justification for attacking the Yuchis, under the pretext of the Yuchi destination from the English and rumored Yuchi attacks on their Cherokee host, and perhaps with official collusion. Long probably assumed that he could execute his plot with impunity. Instead, Long and his co-conspirators fell afoul the recently reinstated agent Thomas Narine, who had increased enforcement of trade policies in an attempt to rein in abusive traders who jeopardized Carolina's security by alienating the colony's native allies. All right, let's go even further. The aftermath of the Chestatouille affair. Long schemes achieved his immediate objective. Chestatouille was destroyed, and its inhabitants were either killed or enslaved to pay Yuchi and other Cherokee trading debts. Long's burning desire for vengeance was presumably sated. The trader probably neither foresaw nor cared about the border repercussions of his scheme, which reverberated through the Southeast for decades. The most immediate outcome of the Chestoe raid was exportation of the Uchis from the Tennessee Valley for most of the 18th century. Driven from eastern Tennessee, the Chestoe survivors joined the Savannah town Uchis, or the Uchis of the Osamuki River, in close contact and presumably alliance with Lower Creeks, Yamasees, Appalachies, Savannahs, and the Palachacolas. Key combatants, in the Yamasee War of 1715 to 1718. These settlements were rife with anxiety and unrest over increasingly abusive Carolina traders and spiraling trade debts. The Uchis experience at Chestoe informed mounting native distress about Carolina's loss of control over rogue traders and arrest the very real threat of the Carolina slave trade, cannibalizing its own allied slavers. When rumors circulated that the white man would come and fetch the Yamasee in one night, take all the rest of them for slaves, and sent them all off the country. The Chestoe survivors could vouch for the plausibility of the rumor. At the outbreak of the Yamasee War in April 1715, the Uchis cast their lot with the militants and were in the forefront of attacks on Carolina. After initial success, the Yamasee and their allies suffered a series of military setbacks, and the militant settlements on the Savannah and the Osamuki retreat to the Chattahoochee to escape the reprisal of the Carolinas. The Yamasee War deepened the Uchis' dependent alliance with the Lower Creeks, especially connections with the town of Casata. This alliance strengthened the Uchi position for avenging the Chestoe killings, and events in the Yamasee War enabled Uchis to prosecute their revenge on the Cherokee with support from their Creek hosts. Early in the Yamasee War, Carolina dispatched Eleazar Wiggin to woo the Cherokee into English alliance, specifically to fight the Uchis, the Yamasee, the Appalachians. Later, when George Chicken conferred with Cherokee leaders about joining the fight against southward Indians, i.e. Lower Creeks, Yamasee, Uchi, Appalachians, and the Savannahs, the conjurer of Tugalu informed him that the Yamasees were an ancient people and that he would not fight against them. And as for Creeks, they had accepted flag of truce, but that the Cherokees would eagerly join the fight against the Savannahs and the Uchi and the Appalachians. In another meeting, Chicken held out the lure of plunder and slaves for the Cherokees to join the war against the southward Indians. They responded, it was not plunder they wanted for them, but to go to war with them and cut them off, for it was but as yesterday as they were at war together, and it was by persuasions of English they were at ever peace. The pro-English war fraction amongst the Cherokees committed the nation by killing 11 Lower Creek ambassadors at Tugalu. This embroiling the Cherokee in a conflict with the Lower Creeks and the Uchi constituents. They dragged far beyond the Yamasee War, with Lower Creeks and occasionally Tallapoosa, Coosa, and Abhakaz in the lead. Uchi warriors participate in raids that cut off a number of Cherokee towns, including Nuchuchi and Quanasi, and assailed key settlements such as the Tagalu and the Estato, causing a general retrenchment and contraction of the Cherokee periphery. The protracted Creek Cherokee War spun into a superior regional conflict that consumed the Cherokees, the Chickasaw, the Catawba, the Creek, the Choctaw, and even northern Iroquois in endless cycles of blood revenge that played out across much of eastern North America. While the Chesapeake attack certainly did not cause either the Yamasee War or the ensuing Creek Cherokee War, the 1713 raid clearly informed and shaped those conflicts by delineating Yuchi-Cherokee opposition, Yuchi alliance with, and eventual incorporation into the emergent Creek Nation grew from these conflicts that spanned an entire generation. This dependent alliance originally derived in part from Yuchi's need for a secure base from which to avenge Chesapeake, and came to define the Yuchi's place in the social-political landscape of the Southeast that emerged in the aftermath of the Yamasee War. All right. The Board of Trade account of the Chesapeake affairs provide an important narrative window of the Yuchi community in the crucible of the southeastern shattered zone. Contrary to early interpretation of the account, the presence of the Yuchi community at Chesapeake in 1713 cannot be construed as evidence of pre-contact or proto-historic Yuchi occupation in the Hiwassee River Valley. Conversely, neither does the account negate the hypothesis of the proto-historic era of the Yuchi presence in eastern Tennessee. It simply does not speak to that point. Instead, Chesapeake account, in conjunction with the narrative and cartographic evidence from the preceding decade, yields a view of the Yuchi as a small, yet militarily potent and highly mobile nation that adapted to the chaos of the late 17th and early 18th century by assuming roles as armed proxies, trading partners, and slavers for the English. This alternative reading of the Yuchi's role in the Shatter Zone runs counter to representations of the Yuchis as an embattled tribe on the run, forced from their ancient homeland and compelled to seek refuge on the margins of more powerful groups. The Yuchis' probable engagement as active participants in the slave trading economy reflects one of the few strategies for surviving available to small societies that were trapped in the maelstrom of the Shatter Zone. This strategy, marked by frequent relocations and shifting alliances, closely parallels that of the Westos and the Shakas, and a common adaptation in the trajectories of these culturally distinct groups may have led the Swanston to mistake their shared roles for shared identity. The Shatter Zone presented its inhabitants with repugnant choices. Groups such as the Yuchis, the Westos, and the Shisakas either became well-equipped and militarily aggressive or suffered the fate of tens of thousands of Indians shipped off to toil away short lives on the sugar plantations of the West Indies. I repeat that again. The Shatter Zone presented its inhabitants with repugnant choices. Groups such as the Yuchis, the Westos, and the Shisakas either became well-equipped and militarily aggressive or suffered the fate of tens of thousands of Indians shipped off to toil away short lives on the sugar plantations of the West Indies. The Yuchis opted for survival as a small nation that cast a large and heavily armed shadow across the southeast. But the Chesapeake, that strategy failed, and one Yuchi community reaped the whirlwind when the Carolina Indian slave trade consumed some of his own. Now, I'm going to stop right there. All right? It's in this book. And I mispronounced some names, and I apologize for that. I try to be the best to try to pronounce names, but what this talks about, how, and I mentioned this before, how you had various different tribes siding with the Europeans that was coming over here. The English, the French, and the Spanish. And it was warring amongst each other. And so, if they didn't take sides, they might have been afraid of being captured themselves. So they went, worked with these Europeans, and capturing other Indian groups, smaller Indian groups, and taking the women, killing the men in many instances, and taking the women and the children as slaves. This is the origin of your slave trade. It didn't originate in Africa, it originated here. The original slaves, like I mentioned this before, were your black Aboriginal Indians. They weren't Africans. And this is something that we really need to dig into deep. And you notice when I was reading those names, they sounded very similar. Cherokee, Appalachee, or Muki, Gulagichi. The names are very similar because they're basically the same damn people in that region. The so-called Geechee most of them not from damn Africa. They're from here. The names are too damn similar. That's a lot of things you can pick up on. Like I said, I apologize with the pronunciation or something. I try to pronunciate the stuff as best as I can. I try to at least get it out. You know, some of them I know, some of them are like, we call it a word twister. But the information I'm giving you, it's nothing new. This is old information. This is information that should be taught to our youth in school, but we're not taught this information. We're taught we're slaves from Africa. That is so incorrect, man. That is so incorrect. We have to understand, yes, there were slaves that came from Africa, but it wasn't that many. But most of the slaves were taken here. A lot of them, they just shipped from one location here. Say you're taking from Louisiana, you can take some maybe over to Virginia or to the Caribbean, or the Caribbean to here. I just mentioned it in the damn book. They took some of the people here to the West Indies. They weren't necessarily going to Africa. They were doing it here. So you need to understand that, brothers and sisters. I'm not denying they brought some from Africa, but majority of the black people who are here in America, majority of them in freaking Brazil are Aboriginal black people. We originated, we were already here. We're already here. This is something you have to understand. Alright, you have to understand. That's why I picked certain parts of the book that talks about taking indigenous black people here and enslaving them. They enslaved them. They enslaved indigenous black people here. I'm gonna keep hammering this, man. I'm gonna hammer this good. The first blacks who were enslaved were here. And obviously spelled black Moors, black Europeans was kicked out of Europe. But your first blacks were enslaved here. Not Africa. So when I hear these morons attack people saying that they are the true Indians, they're black, that tells me, man, they don't know what the hell they talking about. And that people, they need to stop listening to them. But some of them have large followings, and they are extremely ignorant. There's no excuse for this, man. This information is very accessible. Now, granted, some of the stuff is in your face. Other stuff, you just can't Google it. You're going to have to research it. Some pictures you can Google, but you're going to have to research this stuff. Because when I hear some of these idiots on YouTube, I name some of them, man, they make me sick. Because they continue to go with the script that these white folks are giving them and train them in these damn schools. It's a damn lie. They go with this slave narrative that we came from Africa. And I'm not, we have a connection to them in Africa, but we had great civilization here. We built amongst ourselves. We built great civilization, but a lot of it was greed and in-house fighting that helped destroy the black empires that were here in America, man. They helped bring down the black empires in America. All this damn squabbling. We're doing that today. So I'm saying this now. Please learn your goddamn history. Please learn and study your history. Alright? Please research your history. I just read from this book. Alright? So please, learn your damn history. Do not listen to these little Pan-African goofballs. Because that's what they are. Because they would deflect and deny anything that has to do with Aboriginal blacks here in America. You just a slave that came from Africa. For some West African tribe. And you was captured. And they took your African name and your dignity. Screw them bastards, man. Keep telling you that story. That's that line story. Screw those bastards, man. I want you to do and put in research. Because the damn information's there. I showed you pictures how the Yuchai looked before. Now they got these goofy white looking people, these a mixture of white and Asian people running around claiming that they are the Yuchai. No, they're not. They're not the Yuchai. They're not the Yuchai. They're not them. Alright? But the disgusting aspect is that we continue to allow people to steal the identity of our ancestors here while claiming a land thousands of miles away and saying that we have no connection or no culture here in the Americas, no deep culture in America, and just talking about going to Africa. That's get on my nerves. Even this Juneteenth stuff. These dudes wave around this red, black, and green flag. Man, that is not our flag, man. That is not our flag. That's that Pan-African stuff. And they don't hijack Juneteenth. Well, I'm not really celebrating Juneteenth like that, but I'm saying these fools don't try to continue to hijack Juneteenth with their red, black, and green flag. What I'm saying, and I'm continuing to say this, is that we have to realize that we've been lied to. We've been lied to. And we realize that the education that we've received in this country has just been a big lie. So we have to understand that and comprehend it. And come to grips that, hey man, we've been bamboozled. And we've been sold a bag of false goods. Alright? I could have read it off my phone, but there was shading that I would have been reading it slow. I don't like reading it slow like that and then going back and forth. So I decided just to read it and put the phone down. But the Yuchi Indian History Before the Removal Era. This is a book that you should check out. Alright? Show it one more time. Alright. This is the book. Alright. Brothers and sisters, continue to do the research. That's it, man. I'm going to try to do another one today or in the morning. But, yeah, that's it. I want you, brothers and sisters, to continue to learn and grow. So don't worry about getting people mad at you because you decided not to call yourself quarter African American, because you're not that. You are a true American. You are a descendant of the first Americans, right? Don't let people like Ron Kittles and all those little goofballs, Henry Louis Gates, deter you from learning about your true history. Go get it. Your information's out there. Go get it. All right? Go get your information. Lots of things you can tell by these names. These names sound too similar. Like I said, Omageechee, Cherokees, Mookie River. I mean, come on, man. This is so goddamn obvious, man. It's so obvious. But I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to chill out. Maybe watch the USFL game a little bit. Or watch some NASCAR. I don't know. I'm going to get down later. I'm just going to lay down, relax. But I got to go run out and do some things. But I may do another one later tonight, or I'll probably do one definitely tomorrow. I'll be done. But I just want to get that over. All right, peace and love.